James Comey is the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Mr. Comey, good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk about the personal toll that this takes on the victims. I mean, it's absolutely a devastating nightmare, isn't it?
Yes, it turns their life into a storm of financial problems. They ultimately will not be liable for the losses that are run up on their cards or credit lines are opened in their name, but to undo it is an incredible morass of calls and letters and trying to convince people that you're not the crook, that you've been a victim.
But for example, the elderly woman who I know called your office on Friday night talking about her $35,000 bank account only had $1,000 in it, right?
Somebody had taken over her identity and stroked a $34,000 check, taking basically everything from that balance.
Will she be able to retrieve that money?
It's my understanding that she will not be liable for it. But as I said, that's simpler than it really is. I mean, it's hard for anyone to undo this sort of thing when your identity is taken over, is captured by crooks.
You've charged Philip Cummings, the man who sold the software and passwords, with wire fraud and conspiracy. He's looking at a possible 30-year sentence and up to a $1 million fine. Ironically, this guy worked at the help desk, right?
Right.
And that's how he got access to all these passwords and all these clues to various people's identities?
That's right. He was there to help the customers of his employer, and when folks would call in, he'd say, give me your passcode and your password, and he kept track of those, and that's what enabled him and his co-conspirators to pretend they were those corporate customers and get these tens of thousands of reports.
How difficult is this to do? Is it because he just happened to be at the right place at the right time? Ultimately not, but because of the position he held in his company that this was possible? I mean, there are other ways to secure people's passwords and social security numbers and keys to their identities, so this kind of scam can be done, right?
Yes, and it happens all the time all around the country. What made this different is the scale, that it was his status as an insider that allowed him, for example, to order 15,000 credit reports in the name of Ford Motor Credit. And that's when the scheme started to unravel. They hit Ford too much, and Ford got billed for all those credit reports. And someone at Ford said, hey, wait a minute, we didn't order 15,000 of these things. And that's when the credit agency started to investigate and the FBI was called in.
Are you going to go after his company, TCI, which I guess is Teledata Communications Incorporated as well?
The company's been cooperating. It appears that they were a victim in this as well. They had an employee that they had to trust to a certain extent to have a help desk, and he exploited that trust.
You also had a cooperating witness, someone who worked with Philip Cummings. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, we caught the number 2 guy, a fellow named Linus Baptiste, who was the one who pitched the idea to Cummings in the first place, who said, I have a bunch of fraudster customers who would love to get their hands on these menus, these credit reports of people's financial lives, and they'll pay me $60 a report. Why don't you and I split it? So the first guy we caught was Baptiste, and the FBI searched his apartment in New Rochelle, New York, and found a laptop that belonged to Cummings. And that's when Baptiste flipped, became a cooperator, and said he would help the government.
You know, I know that we're talking about $2.7 million, and that's a modest figure at this point in time. It could be much, much more, right? Are you ever going to apprehend the people who ultimately got the money?
We're going to try. What we're going to do is...
How many people, by the way, Jim, do you think are involved in this whole thing?
There's really no telling. I mean, Baptiste talked about 20 customers, but there's no doubt that they, in the underworld of fraudsters, had their own customers. And so it's almost as if Baptiste and Cummings opened a fire hydrant of fraud, and the waters run out into 1,000 or more than that little streams of fraud. And our goal is to work it down. We'd like to find the people who took those credit reports and used them.
Meanwhile, there are about 500 to 700,000 of these cases every single year, which is really mind-boggling. What can be done to protect individuals, and should laws be enacted so this is more difficult to do? What do you think?
Well, we have pretty tough laws. I mean, my slice of the world is law enforcement, and my contribution, I hope, is going to be to slam these people, to send a message to the other would-be crooks out there who attempted to put fingers to the keyboard.